Most job applications are pretty straightforward. It's kind of like name, rank, and serial number, right? Your name, your contact information, your work history, education, maybe a couple of things, that you check a couple boxes, and that's it. You sign it, and then you send it in with all your other supporting documents. But sometimes applications have questions or pre-screening questions on the application itself, and they may seem like interview-like questions. So if you look at some examples here of some questions that you might find on the actual job application, it might ask you on an application, do you prefer to work alone or with a team? Or are you experienced with ABC software? Maybe or certain maybe coding language, because that's so critical to them. One thing you see a lot of too is, what are your salary requirements? You as the person applying for the job, what kind of salary, minimum or range do you need to even take a job with us here? So they might ask these questions beforehand. Some might seem a little bit uncomfortable. Like, I don't want to provide my salary information now. That usually comes at the end after we did all these interviews, and you make me an offer and we have a negotiation. Now you're asking me, and I haven't even had an interview. You put it right on the job application. Why is that? And then also, and we'll tell you why that is by the way in a moment. They also may have you take an employment test before you even get an interview, right? They might have you answer like a basic math type thing, depending on the job position, or something a little bit more extensive. They may even have you do like a mini personality test or emotional intelligence test. Later in the course, we have a whole section on exams and testing and case studies and all the different types of testing that's out there. So that'll come later in the course. But they might ask you a few questions even when you're applying, particularly online, where they can give you an online exam or test right then and there as part of your application process. So why are they doing, but they don't usually do that, by the way. It varies. It might vary by your position that you're looking for. A more senior position or skill position might be more, they might spend some money on that versus more of an entry-level position. And understand that it costs companies money to do that. Either they got a program of something in their own website, but usually they're using these job boards or job aggregators or finding things or something, and they're using that, and that costs money to have an online exam or a mini exam that could happen. So why do companies do this? Why do they have sometimes have these online exams before you even have an interview, or certainly asking things like your salary requirements? You haven't had an interview like that. What's the purpose of that? Why are they even bothering to do that? And it's important to them to do that, by the way, otherwise they wouldn't have it as part of the job application process. Remember, you haven't had an interview or anything yet. This is just the job application. So why do they do that? You probably have a good idea by now, but let's spell it out, right? It's the whole idea is to screen you out, right? They want to screen you out. They want to take this large number of applications that are coming on. They post a job, they get all these applications, and they especially want the machines or algorithms to initially do the initial screening to screen people out, to make that big group of resumes or applications smaller. So they're doing that screening process. And how do they do that? Well, they might tell the algorithm, or the computer system basically, that anybody who's looking for a salary above X number of dollars or euros or whatever it is, eliminate them, right? So if your salary is too high that you're putting on your application, well, you're going to be eliminated that way. So if anything, be a little bit lower on the salary. I mean, within reason, don't say something you wouldn't absolutely not take, but sometimes they'll screen out if you're too low because they think you're not experienced. So it's know those salary ranges. You can go to places like salary.com, by the way, and get an idea for your job position or the jobs you might be applying for, especially if you're looking for a promotion job, we're moving to advance up by going to a different company, or your job career changer. There's places you can get salary information. Salary.com, simple place you can find stuff. So with that, they're screening you out, let's say based on that salary question, too high maybe, and sometimes too low, but typically too high. Or they're screening you out because you don't do well enough on this initial, basic exam that they have in there too. So again, these are different things that are making that pot smaller. And things that might be on the job application, if you're not relocatable, then all of a sudden that makes that pot smaller too. So they take this big thing, and then especially with online, they'll make that smaller, and then it gets to human resource people, and then they'll take that information and then make it smaller still, as they do their own more human physical review, which takes longer time. So understand that application the goal is to get things started for you, but even before things can start for you, they might start to screen you out. And your goal, of course, is to move on to the next phase, which means they're going to look at your interview, or they're going to look at your application. They'll look at your supporting documents. You've gotten that far. You've gotten through those gatekeepers, and then they'll have an initial interview with you. They might be just a quick phone interview as a screening interview, just to confirm some of the things on your application, ask you a couple questions. It might take like 30 minutes or less, and then you're on, to the next phase where you might have more come in and do some big formal type of interviews, for example. But as far as the applications, particularly online applications and all these things they're doing, the whole idea and understand that is when they're asking their things, they're thinking of ways to screen you out. So when you're filling out your application, we're not lying here, but we're looking at it and say, boy, my job requirements, well, I'm making X dollars and I'd love to take another job that pays me up here. If you put up here, you might screen yourself out without even having a conversation with the company, as one example. So you might want to lower that number. And then through the interview process, and then as we know at the very end, what do we know? At the end, we have the power. You have the power because they'll give you a job offer and you can decide whether to take it. So get through that screening process. And let me tell you another tip just around the salary part is once you get through the interview process, then they want you and then they love you. And then that whole job, what you put on your application for salary requirements, they're not even looking at that. Now they're talking to you one-on-one about salary requirements. And that's when you can have a real discussion around it. And that's just one example of different things they can ask on applications. So that kind of wraps up the application section here and gives you a feel for this legal document and why they do it and how you can fill it out to present yourself maybe in a little better light, even though it seems pretty straightforward.